Today, we are diving deep into the story of St. Augustine, Florida. It's a city with a wild, transformative past that, believe it or not, is really a cornerstone of the entire American story. You know, when you stroll through St. Augustine's narrow cobblestone streets, it's hard not to feel like you've stepped back in time. It really does feel like a living museum, this charming little window into a totally different era. But here's the thing. Underneath that beautiful, peaceful surface is a story of just brutal conflict, of survival against all odds, and of a pretty radical reinvention. So how on earth did a fortified, gritty colonial outpost turn into this picture-perfect place we all know? Well, let's get into it. Okay, first things first, let's talk about that famous title, America's Oldest City. It's a fantastic tagline, you see it everywhere, but what does it actually mean? Well, the real answer is a lot more specific and, frankly, a lot more interesting than you might think. Right, so here's the official, kind of long-winded definition, and every single word there matters. It was founded by the Spanish way back in 1565. Now, to put that in perspective, that's 42 years before the English settled Jamestown and a full 55 years before the Pilgrims even landed at Plymouth Rock. This isn't just some trivia tidbit. That massive head start is what sets the stage for its absolutely unique, centuries-long story of survival. See, St. Augustine wasn't founded to be some peaceful colony where people could come, start a new life. No way. It was a cold, calculated, strategic move in a really high-stakes game between empires. Its whole purpose was military, and it was born directly out of a clash between two of Europe's biggest superpowers, Spain and France. Okay, so picture this. In 1564, a group of French Protestants build Fort Caroline, basically planting a rival flag right next to the Gulf Stream. And the Gulf Stream was like the superhighway for Spain's treasure fleets heading back to Europe. This was a huge threat. Spain couldn't let it stand. So, a year later, King Philip II of Spain sends his best admiral, a guy named Pedro Menéndez de Avilés, with one job: get rid of the French. He founded St. Augustine as his base of operations, and just a few days later, he did exactly that, in a pretty brutal fashion. So, from that very violent beginning, the threats just kept on coming. For more than 100 years, the city was in a constant fight for its life against English privateers, pirates, you name it. To survive, they knew they had to build something that could take whatever was thrown at it. And I mean, the attacks were relentless. The famous Sir Francis Drake shows up and burns the city's first wooden fort in 1586. Then, in 1668, pirates come in and just wreck the place. That was really the last straw. The Spanish decided they needed something permanent, something indestructible. And so they started building a massive stone fortress, the Castillo de San Marcos. And boy, did it work. It proved its worth almost immediately, holding off a massive 38-day siege in 1740. So what was the secret? What made this fort so incredibly strong? The answer wasn't some fancy material from Europe. It was literally quarried right there on the Florida coast. It's this amazing local stone called coquina. You can think of it like nature's concrete, made from millions of years of compressed shells. And here's the genius part. Unlike hard stone that shatters on impact, the soft, porous coquina acted like a sponge. Cannonballs didn't crack it. They just kind of sank into the walls. The result was nothing short of a military masterpiece. The Castillo de San Marcos is the oldest masonry fort in all of North America, and in its entire long history, it was never, ever captured by a direct attack. It's still standing today, the ultimate symbol of the city's sheer will to survive. All right, get ready for a total pivot, because we're jumping into a completely different chapter. After centuries of being this gritty, isolated military town, St. Augustine was about to go through one of the most dramatic makeovers you can imagine. It was going to become a luxurious winter paradise for America's new class of super-rich industrialists. Just to give you a sense of how big this change was, get this. A British colonel who was stationed there in the 1760s described his time in the city as the most disagreeable of his entire life. It was hot, buggy, and in the middle of nowhere. But that was all about to change, thanks to one man with a huge vision and an even bigger bank account. And that man was Henry Flagler, co-founder of Standard Oil. Where everybody else saw a swampy backwater, he saw an American Riviera. So, in the late 1880s, he just poured his incredible wealth into St. Augustine. He built these magnificent, jaw-dropping hotels like the Ponce de Leon. And then he extended his railroad all the way down from New York to bring all his wealthy friends down in style. He basically single-handedly reinvented the city's entire identity. So, we've covered the city's violent birth and its glamorous rebirth. But Flagler's vision wasn't the end of the story, not by a long shot. St. Augustine just kept evolving, and its story often mirrored the deepest struggles and changes happening in the rest of America. I mean, just look at its political history. It's a complete whirlwind. The flag flying over the city was constantly changing. It went from Spanish to British, then back to Spanish, and then finally, in 1821, it became part of the United States. And every single one of those rulers left their own mark, their own architecture, creating the incredible layers you can still see today. And that history continued to be written well into the 20th century. In 1964, this ancient city became a critical and very violent battleground in the civil rights movement. Activists led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. held nonviolent protests, like wade-ins at the city's segregated beaches. The absolutely brutal response they faced was broadcast all over the country. It shocked the nation and created this immense political pressure that was actually key in helping to pass the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964. And that brings us right back to where we started. When you walk through St. Augustine today, you are literally walking through all these layers of history. You're on the original Spanish street grid, you can touch the same coquina stone from the colonial era, and you can marvel at the over-the-top, opulent architecture from Flagler's Gilded Age. It's all there, together, telling one single, epic, 450-year-old story. St. Augustine's story is one of constant, radical reinvention. From a military fort to a millionaire's playground to a pivotal battleground for civil rights, the city's stones tell a powerful and really complex story of America itself. It kind of leaves you wondering, doesn't it? What stories from our time are we choosing to preserve in stone for the next 450 years?